Ah, Legolas, hun hero.
As Tolkien relates it later in The Lord of the Rings, Thranduil and Legolas are not Sylvan elves. They are Sindar. The Sindar are among the elves who left to go to the Undying Lands and stopped along the way. But they had some contact with the Valar and the powers that be.
The Sindar elves have been exposed to that divine influence, and now they serve as kind of governors and guiders of the Sylvan elves, who make up kind of the mass of the Woodland Realm society.
So one of the ways in which we tried to show that was very simply the white blonde hair.
The pure blonde would be Thranduil and Legolas.
I think it's better to have not many others blonde, to tell you the truth.
I agree.
Because then it makes Legolas and his dad sort of stand out as the royal kind of line.
We had to make Thranduil sort of appear so supreme and really quite cold in his attitude. We decided he was above all hair ornamentation. We wanted him to look completely like he was in control. So although there was nothing holding his hair back, it never really moved. And if it did, it was always very controlled, as if there was another force looking after his hair for him.
The one thing I was afraid of is that they were going to pluck my eyebrows and do something crazy with my eyebrows. And I was like, Peter, please, no, please, let's, don't.
I originally did designs for him with a much more shaped eyebrow, like the other elves. In the end, we actually lifted his eyebrows with these little guy ropes you stick on, made of fish skin. So we did that to his eyebrow.
Can I get a shot of your eyes? I'll just get a shot.
And I got to wear these kind of icy gray contacts.
They do have a slightly unnerving quality.
We had to use color contacts for him. He's got very dark eyes, a bit like Orlando. Legolas had blue eyes, so his father has to have blue eyes as well.
Oh, the crown.
The crown was like a tangled mass of roots and thorns with little tiny leaves inlaid into them, representing the leaves of the primary trees of Mirkwood.
The crown designs that I gave him, I tried to put little barbs and bring everything to points so that, you know, if you're standing next to the guy and he turns his head, you're likely to get swiped, and he wouldn't care.
Oh, don't!
I just did it for that.
Tolkien describes Thranduil as having this amazing crown of thorns with seasonal leaves and berries and flowers sort of mixed in with it.
In the book, in other seasons, there are other things.
On his head was a crown of berries and red leaves, for the autumn was come again. In the spring, he wore a crown of woodland flowers.
They were shooting a scene that takes place in the prologue and that didn't make it into the movie. So when we were going to put this crown back on, I said, well, we should probably change the berries to something else.
Here's the crown. Here's the crown.
You want the berries painted as well, don't you?
Yeah, let's just pull the berries out.
Just take them off.
Just take them out.
What do you think?
Because
Ferns,
the ever-wise Lee Pace brought
God
it up.
damn it, don't you blame me for this, Zane. Don't you put this on me.
Are you talking seasonal?
Yeah, we're gonna. What
I
we'd
have
like
spear
to do,
leaves.
You do,
Well,
yes.
but they're all the same colour.
No, we need green ones.
Zane, our executive producer, went out the back of the lot and brought back in a plant, and we just decorated the crown with that.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's green.
That's exactly what done.
Shove that in.
Shove that in that crown.
You take the yellow flower off.
Take the yellow flowers off. They just wrap these in and Bob's your uncle. I don't know what the hell the problem is here.
Thank goodness you're here, Zane.
I know.
We're saving the movie.
That happened on a daily basis with Zane, so he saved the film every day.
This looks like a leggy sword, much more than a Thranduil.
Oh, let me get a shot of you with that leggy, because it might be the only time you hold it.
Yes. It will most definitely be the only time I hold it.
Thranduil's sword is one of the most difficult swords that we've ever made, and therefore one of the most enjoyable objects we've ever made. Something very elven and very superior, almost samurai-like.
I drew a sword that basically just one long barb of metal from grip and pommel all the way through to the blade. Pretty lethal looking shape. And I love the idea that there would be cutouts in the sword.
We did do a huge amount of work on the Mirkwood elves quite early on. And one of the elements that did endure and end up being carried through was this idea that many of the blades have what we came to call negative spaces in them, basically holes, which echo the engraving on the blade and to have light coming through in unexpected places.
His sword is the most sophisticated weapon we made because it's made out of a single block of aluminium, and the hand grip is hollow and pierced. If you're into swords, as we are, that gorgeous sword was really special.
And when I was going through Weta, I saw it being carved. It's like this machine just kind of laser carving it. It's a beautiful, beautiful weapon.
Then to have Lee be so enthusiastic about it was really special.
God, isn't it crazy? Richard, it's fucking crazy.
Lee didn't hold it aloft. He didn't hold it across his body. He immediately dropped it down towards the floor and turned, and the sword became an extension not of his body but of his purpose, of his arrogance as Thranduil, and it was like, oh God, cool moment.
Weta is just amazing. It's like every room you go into. This room, they're sewing scales onto elven armor, and then you go into the next room and they're sculpting orc heads, and then they're doing the prosthetics for the dwarves in the next room, and then you go and there's like a sword master in the next room working out the blades. I said to Richard Taylor, I was like, I want a job here.
In Lee's downtime between filming, Lee started popping in too, and he actually threw himself straight into the work.
I painted some armor for dwarves. I made some dwarf crossbows. It's kind of ironic that they had me making dwarf stuff. I'm playing the king of the elves, man.
Tolkien's elves are almost superhuman in respect of their abilities when it comes to combat. And the fact that they have been around for thousands of years, you'd have to pick up a thing or two.
Thranduil, you know, he's the greatest warrior that you're ever going to see in Middle-earth. You see what Legolas can do. So the challenge now is, well, here's his dad.
One day Pete called us all together, and the subject was Thranduil and his fighting style.
That's all right, just come and sit down then.
We originally wanted him to be this all-action, all-flying, all-jumping, all-kung-fu expert type fighter.
Peter wanted as many ideas as possible, and he just came to the previous team and just said, give me as many ideas as possible so he could cherry-pick what he wanted.
It was forefront in our minds that the father to Legolas would have an even more dynamic and extraordinary fighting style. But the more the conversations evolved, the more clear it became that because of who Thranduil is as a character, as we saw him develop through the movies, he needed a much greater level of heightened efficiency.
So less is better, so...
Yeah, not as flamboyant as Legolas.
Yeah,
I think the jumping and the swinging, probably not so much with Thranduil. He's more just diddly with these two swords, like a couple of razor blades slicing through the orcs.
If we went back half his lifetime, you'd see Legolas in Thranduil, because he'd be acrobatic, he'd be doing his flamboyant stuff. But then over the years, he learnt, why waste that energy? Why not go back to simplicity and just make it do only what you need to do?
He keeps that blade close to him, and even when he is defending, it's offensive. He gets close to his enemy.
A lot of that fight stuff was Zor Lee, who wanted to do everything of his own. I mean, he was so dedicated into putting that time into learning to use both swords.
And your hand comes to the outside of your shoulder. Oh. That's it. Fast as you can. That's all you have to do. Good.
We designed quite a lot of sweeping overhead movements, dynamic kind of swirling sword stuff that are over his head, and a few glimpses within the fight. You might even say it was quite Matador-ish.
When you watch him, you could see, okay, if you think about Matador, oh yeah, you can sort of see that little style in him, very upright, very erect. But the way he used the weapons was so fast, he actually cut through the enemy like a hot knife through butter.
The Battle of the Five Armies fundamentally changes everything for Thranduil. His eyes are opened, and The Thranduil that we see after that is a man who is re-engaging with the world.
Your key characters, you want to feel that at the end of your story, they're not the same as they were at the beginning. And we've tried to do that with THRANDUIL.
When we were developing and writing and structuring the films, we had a backstory for these white gems that he literally goes to war over. And we thought, okay, these gems were made and fashioned for his wife, and that she never got to wear them.
I know an elf lord who will pay a pretty price for these.
He had lost his great love, his wife, which is why Thranduil wants the diamonds, and he is willing to go to war for them.
There's a necklace in that mountain. White gems strung upon silver. I want it retrieved.
It's also one of the reasons that he's withdrawn from the world in the northern reaches of Mirkwood is because he's suffered such great loss.
The Elven Gate.
Thranduil built this beautiful statue in memory of her and had it placed at the entrance to Mirkwood, which is really the entrance to his realm.
There is no grave, no memory.
In the books, we never hear anything about Legolas's mother. We imagine that she was lost to him.
The ancient kingdom of Angmar. My mother died there. My father does not speak of it.
By the time you get to the Battle of the Five Armies, you get a sense at the end, certainly, of a character who's beginning to soften.
Why does it hurt so much?
When Tauriel loses Keely, there is very much a connection, you know, of what that loss is about.
Her pain, her having loved, makes him see what he has become. And it awakens something inside of him. Sympathy, kindness. And those are coming back to someone who we've only ever seen as quite detached and cold.
And he actually realizes he's stuffed up so badly that he's damaged his relationship with his son.
Those gems were not all your wife left you, my friend. She left you a son. Tell me, which would she have you value more?
We always like to imagine, as part of her backstory, that she died defending her child, because that's one of his last lines to Legolas.
Your mother loved you more than anyone, more than life.
Thranduil began to realize that son, that living, breathing child, is far more important and valuable than those cold white gems. But he now knows that he's going to have to let his son go.
Where will you go?
I do not know.
Go north. Find the Dunedain.
I wrote that scene invoking Aragorn. I never thought it would get shot. I thought this has got nothing to do with anything. It's just utter geekdom. And I showed it to Pete and Fran, and they both immediately went, yeah, love it. Let's do it.
There's a young ranger amongst them. You should meet him.
When Thranduil says to Legolas, go and find this ranger, he's speaking the truth with the prescience that elves have, but also, I think, his own wish that his own son, you know, might in fact surpass his own deeds.
His father, Arathon, was a good man. His son might grow to be a great one.
He's also acknowledging greatness in Legolas and acknowledging that his son may be a wiser man than he is.
It was an expression of love and apology, I guess.
That was the moment that my story is nicely brought to a close as a character that would leave the Mirkwood realm to be a part of the Fellowship of the Ring.
I think it's important to realize that we also have Thranduil, who is now ready to play his part. It's there in the background of Lord of the Rings, in the appendices.
During the War of the Ring, while Minas Tirith is being assailed in the south, Sauron sends forces against the Elven realms of the north. Thranduil and his army of elves repel the orcs that attack Mirkwood.
Basically, they tie up a huge amount of Sauron's resources and they prevent the north from falling.
Thranduil is now a character going forward with a sense of purpose that is not motivated by loss or by personal gain, but by a genuine desire to help. He's a totally different character to the one that we met in the beginning of The Hobbit.